In 2015, a man who had served the Catholic Church for 31 years walked into the offices of an Italian journalist in Rome. He was shaking. He placed a leather folio on the desk and said, and I quote, "They have a room below the archive. It is not for documents." He refused to say what was in that room. 14 days later, he was found dead in his apartment in Trastevere. Natural causes, they said. He was 53 and had no prior health conditions. What was in that room and why the Vatican has spent 12 centuries making sure you never find out is a story I need to tell you tonight. But you're not ready for the answer yet. So let's start at the beginning. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, until 2019, officially called the Vatican's Secret Archive, contains an estimated 85 linear kilometers of shelving. 85 kilometers. That's the distance from Rome to the coast. 12 centuries of papal correspondence, trial records, diplomatic cables, and documents so sensitive that fewer than 60 scholars per year are granted even partial access. And partial is the key word, because there are entire sections, catalogued, indexed, known to exist, that no living researcher has ever been permitted to see. The archive was formally established by Pope Paul V in 1612, but its contents stretch back to the 8th century. Now here's what most people miss. The Vatican didn't seal these documents to protect political secrets. Politics, they'll eventually release. They declassified Galileo's trial documents. They opened files on the Second World War. What they have never, not once in 400 years, opened are the files from a section internally referenced as the Fondo Riserva, the reserved collection. In 1881, Pope Leo XIII allowed limited scholarly access to the broader archive. But when a French historian named Louis Duchesne requested access to the Fondo Riserva, the response was immediate and absolute: denied. No reason given. Duchesne later wrote to a colleague that a Vatican archivist had told him, off the record, that some documents do not describe the actions of men. He never clarified what that meant. Neither did the Vatican. Most institutions, when faced with something they can't explain, study it. The Vatican built a department to fight it. The Catholic Church's exorcism apparatus is not a relic. It is not symbolic. It is operational. Right now. As of 2018, the Vatican expanded its exorcism training courses due to what they described as, and I want you to hear this carefully, an extraordinary increase in demonic activity worldwide. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the organizing body of the Vatican's annual exorcism conference. There are currently over 400 Vatican-trained exorcists active across the globe. Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist for nearly 3 decades, claimed to have performed over 60,000 exorcisms before his death in 2016, 60,000. But here's what nobody talks about. Father Amorth, in his final years, began saying things publicly that made the Vatican deeply uncomfortable. In a 2010 interview, he stated that the devil was resident in the Vatican, not metaphorically. He said, quote, "There are members of satanic sects within the Vatican, cardinals, bishops, priests, and there are cases of pedophilia and financial scandals that are the work of the devil inside these walls." The Vatican's response? Silence. Complete, deliberate silence. But Amorth said something else, something far less reported. In a private conversation, later transcribed by Italian author Marco Tossati, Amorth allegedly described documents he had seen, documents from the Fondo Riserva that detailed encounters with entities during exorcisms that did not match any known theology. Entities that were not demons, not angels, not anything the church had a name for. When pressed, Amorth reportedly said only, "The church is very old. It has encountered things it chose to forget." Now, I need you to hold on to that phrase because it becomes important later. In 1595, a Benedictine monk named Arnold Wyon published a text attributed to Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop, containing 112 cryptic phrases. Each phrase, Malachy claimed, corresponded to a future pope, in sequence, from his time until the end, not the end of the papacy, the end. 112 popes. Scholars have matched the phrases to actual popes with disturbing accuracy. Pope number 108, John Paul II, was described as de labor solis, from the labor of the sun. He was born during a solar eclipse, and he was buried during one. Pope 110, Benedict XVI, was described as Gloria Olivae, glory of the olive. Benedict chose his name after Saint Benedict, founder of the Olivetan order. Pope 111 is described simply as Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, the final pope. And the prophecy says this: "In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there shall sit Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations. And when these things are finished, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people." The end. Now, Pope Francis is Pope number 112, and the prophecy only listed 111 names. The Vatican's official position on the prophecy of the popes is that it is a forgery, a fabrication. They want you to dismiss it. But here's the part they hope you never learn. In 1624, just 29 years after the prophecy was published, Vatican archivists seized the original Malachy manuscript and sealed it inside the Apostolic archive. If it's just a forgery, why lock it away for 4 centuries? Why not display it, debunk it, let scholars tear it apart? Unless it contains something beyond the 112 names, unless the original manuscript has pages the published version did not include. Some secrets aren't hidden because they're lies. They're hidden because they're true. Remember the man from the beginning? The 31-year veteran who walked into that journalist's office with a leather folio? His name, according to the Italian investigative outlet that eventually published a partial account, was Marco. Just Marco. No surname was ever confirmed. The journalist Andrea Tornielli later described the folio's contents in a private correspondence that was leaked in 2019. It contained photocopies, grainy, clearly taken in haste, of index cards. Vatican archival index cards from the Fondo Riserva. Not documents, just the catalogue entries, the descriptions of what the documents contained. And those descriptions, Tornielli wrote, were enough to keep me awake for weeks. Among the index entries were references to a 1494 papal investigation into what was described as a visitation not of this earth in a monastery near Perugia, a 1789 sealed report on an entity encountered during an exorcism in Lisbon that spoke in a language unknown to any scholar of the Church, describing events that had not yet occurred, events later confirmed to have happened decades later. A 1917 file cross-referenced with the Fatima apparitions, not the 3 published secrets, a 4th account, sealed personally by Pope Pius XII. But here's what nobody talks about. The final index card Marco photographed was different from the others. It was dated 1954. Its classification level was one that Tornielli had never seen in any Vatican document, sub sigillo mortis, under the seal of death. The entry described in 3 lines of Latin what was found during excavations beneath St. Peter's Basilica in 1953. The Vatican has publicly acknowledged those excavations. They say they found the bones of St. Peter. That's the official story. But this index card referenced something else entirely. Something found deeper, in a chamber that, according to the entry, was not constructed by human hands. The church didn't bury a secret. The church was built on top of one. Marco told the journalist one final thing before he left that office. He said, "They didn't build the walls to keep us out. They built the walls to keep something in." Marco died on October 3rd, 2015. His apartment showed no signs of forced entry. His laptop was missing. The leather folio was never recovered from Tornielli's office. It vanished during what was described as a routine burglary in December of that year. Nothing else was taken. He is not the only one. In 2012, a former Vatican translator named Emiliano Fittipaldi published a book alleging massive financial corruption inside the Holy See. He was placed on trial inside Vatican City for stealing confidential documents. The Vatican, a sovereign nation of fewer than 900 citizens, prosecuted a journalist for telling the truth. Father Amorth is dead. Marco is dead. Father Malachi Martin, a former Jesuit who spent years inside the Vatican and later alleged on American radio that the third secret of Fatima described an otherworldly catastrophe that the Church refused to reveal, died after a fall in 1999. The people who talk don't last. The people who last don't talk. And the institution, ancient, patient, vast, continues exactly as it has for 2,000 years. Doors locked, archives sealed, questions unanswered. Every few years, they release a batch of old documents to appear transparent. Political correspondence, diplomatic records, the things that don't matter anymore. The Fondo Riserva has never been opened. The 1954 excavation report has never been declassified, and the room Marco described, the one beneath the archive that is not for documents, does not appear on any official floor plan of Vatican City. Here is what I believe. I believe the Catholic Church is the longest continuously operating institution in human history. I believe that in 2,000 years of investigating miracles, performing exorcisms, cataloging prophecies, and excavating beneath its own foundations, it has encountered things it cannot explain. I believe it chose to contain those things rather than confront them. And I believe the walls of Vatican City are not a symbol of tradition. They are a perimeter. Father Amorth said, "The Church is very old. It has encountered things it chose to forget. But the Church doesn't forget. It archives, it indexes, it catalogues, it files things under sub sigillo mortis, and it seals the doors, and it waits. For what?" That is the question that keeps me up at night. Not what is the Vatican hiding, but what is the Vatican waiting for? The scariest part of this story isn't what's in the archive. It's the possibility that whatever is down there already knows we're looking. If this story unsettled you, good. That means you're paying attention. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the Vatican isn't the only institution hiding things beneath its foundations. If you think this case was disturbing, what happened next was worse. Click the video on your screen.